I feel like I spent a lot of this decade losing myself to C. diff, and it was only recently that I really started to try and find that hope again. I really didn't have a chance to get on my feet. I was so young. I was working in market research with you at the time, and I was excelling. I was a top performer, but then I got sick and I really wasn't able to work. But since I was so young, it came off as me attention seeking or being lazy. People didn't really understand the severity of what I was experiencing. By the time I was finally able to get care and get back on my feet, I had lost a lot of confidence. Hi, my name is Minnie Hatch. I am 31 years old and I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and this is my husband, Spencer. I have spent more than the last decade living with C. diff recurrently. At this point, I've had countless recurrences and I've needed 3 traditional FMTs, and just recently this year I needed, I needed VOWST this year. This feels at this point like it will continue to go on for my entire life. I was 19 when I first got sick. I had been sick for a long time trying to seek care and they couldn't figure out what was going on. It was maybe a year into symptoms, maybe a little less, before I finally got the diagnosis that they missed because I was so young. I had my first FMT within, 2 years of that. And then I needed 2 more traditional FMTs, the last of which was during COVID in 2021 when I almost lost my life. I lost more than 2/3 of my body weight, and I was told to put my affairs in order. My son was very young. How old was Apollo?
He was about 3 when the illness began, and then when that final FMT, I think he was just getting ready for kindergarten, so about 4.5.
And I started suffering from this before he was ever born. Well, before we were married. You've been by my side through every single infection. How has it been for you?
Well, I think it's been a part of our marriage throughout. Early on, your gut health wasn't great, and that first diagnosis took a long time to get. And so it's something that's been with us throughout. And we've looked at different ways of managing it and becoming informed. Working with groups like Peggy Lillis Foundation has been incredibly empowering for me, both as a caregiver and as your partner. It allows me to be informed on what's going on with the illness and the different ways that we can approach it. But it also lets us do what we're doing today and talk about your experience and our experience as a family, and how this illness has impacted you. Part of, I think, what's tricky for me as a caregiver, and I think really anyone talking about C. diff, is the primary symptom is poop, and no one wants to talk about it, and that taboo is there. And in the meantime, patients are literally pooping themselves to death, and it's an awful cycle, and it's, I think, a cycle that many people feel silenced in. And so as a caregiver, it gives me that opportunity to speak that truth in my experience and watching, someone that I love and care about experiencing that and going through it. And like you said, with that last one during COVID, losing, more than half of your body weight as the illness progressed and we were unable to get the care you needed, was hugely impactful to us.
I feel like I spent a lot of this decade losing myself to C. diff, and it was only recently that I really started to try and find that hope again. I really didn't have a chance to get on my feet before I got sick. I was so young. I was working in market research with you at the time, and I was excelling. I was a top performer, but then I got sick and I really wasn't able to work. But since I was so young, it came off as me attention seeking or being lazy. People didn't really understand the severity of what I was experiencing. By the time I was finally able to get care and get back on my feet, I had lost a lot of confidence. And then we had our son so quickly after all of that. I was grateful to be able to spend those years at home while I was trying to navigate this disease where we didn't have any information about it at this time. This is before we had joined Peggy Lillis Foundation. We joined with PLF in 2017.
Mm.
After I had had our son, I had had a very traumatic birth experience because I hadn't tested negative for C. diff, which is not something you do if you don't have symptoms. And I was looking, to better understand what was going to be next. How was my life going to be with this child? Am I going to get him sick? And that's when I finally stumbled across Peggy Lillis Foundation as a resource in 2017. And we have been so grateful to be a part of the foundation since then. It's been a very life-changing experience. The second FMT was well into our work with PLF, but I still hadn't really come out of my shell or been able to get my feet underneath me enough to know exactly what was going on. And I had never gotten out of the brain fog from the first the first series of infections. And so by the time we got into the second round of recurrences, I lost years of my life to that brain fog and that struggle. I really don't remember a lot of it, a lot of those early years of our son's life. And that is something that I will just have to live with.
Yeah, I think, and so speaking of symptoms, the brain fog is one that I think a lot of folks don't talk about a lot, but I see especially when patients get together and they're talking through it, it's a connecting point. Because, like you talked about, I would see care providers dismissing you. And it's that much harder when you are in a situation of brain fog to be articulate and to advocate for yourself. And so I was grateful, to be able to be there and be informed and kind of speak up for your experience and let them know it is serious and what you are experiencing is as you're describing it, and not let them minimize it. But it's one of those things that it's taken years to even understand the experience, much less, master the vocabulary and the skill set to be able to advocate on your behalf and, speak in those appointments or to those specialists. It's one of those things that it shouldn't take two people to navigate an illness. It shouldn't take, a patient and an advocate, but more and more, even with this last year, I have found that that's the case, that, you're there, you're speaking your truth and they have the facts in front of you. And yet we still find ourselves in situations where, someone else does need to be there and speaking up for you and helping them make sure that they are listening to your experience.
So we talked a little bit about how I had that infection during COVID. We knew that things were so bad because I wasn't able to get the care I needed due to testing and restrictions on FMTs during COVID for the safety of patients. Now, when you're on your deathbed, what does that really mean to you? Is something to consider. I think that I would have taken just about any other illness to not have to live my life like that at that time. And we have a little more context now that we didn't have then, that my body doesn't properly make antibodies to some bacterial infections, and this likely has played into my body's inability to fight off the infections without intervention through fecal matter transplants. This has been the most tolling way I think I could spend 10 years, and still I find myself grateful for the experiences along the way. I would not be the person I am today without C. diff, but I have to really be grateful that I am alive through it all. And that's not an experience that anyone should have to live through.
No, I agree. And it's funny thinking about it in the term of not, individual infections or, years of our lives, but at this point, decades. And I think as a little kid, I always wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to teach grade school and then high school, eventually college. And it was never the path I went, but I have found on this journey that that's the skill set that I lean into. And I'm grateful to be able to talk about our story, to go to the seats of power in Washington and talk to them about how healthcare advocacy is an important piece and ask for funding for different pieces, things like that, to talk to specialist organizations or be able to make videos like this where we just discuss our experience. And so it's not the topic I ever planned to be a teacher on, but I'm grateful for the experience and the expertise I've developed to be able to do this and be by your side through it all and continue to raise our family through all of this, including this illness that continues to keep coming back. And, we're just grateful to be able to share this story with everyone and let folks that might be experiencing it as well know they're not alone.
Through all the financial difficulty, the health issues that have come from C. diff that, are not the infection itself, I really am so grateful for the community that we've built together in the Peggy Lillis Foundation. It's a support system that is saving, well, my life at least.
Absolutely, and provides a community not only for you, but also a platform to speak your truth and help people understand. And I think of those early infections and how we could have handled them differently had we known. And so that's why we're here today, to help other people not need to go through this stumbling and help other people know.
That's all about I've got.
Me too. Thank you.